successful here in Chattanooga and across the country and the world as well. So this home is a very special home because it is the first time that we have brought together a group of churches, and I'm not going to give away all the secrets. I'll let my friend Reverend Nathan here talk a little bit about that.
Nathan Malone from Christ United Methodist.
Yes, but all these churches have come together, as you said, to fund and to build this home. So we've had manpower and lots of woman power too. There are lots of ladies out on the construction site and providing support to the builders as well. The family is Shan Melvin and her two children, Trey and Tristan, and they are very excited. Trey is 9 years old, and he's already picked out his room in the house, and his mom drives him by every week, and he's very, very excited. We're going to be dedicating this house on March 22nd, which is tomorrow. So he's going to be really excited to actually get it into the house. And baby Tristan is too small to have picked out his room yet, but we know that he will be able to grow up in a safe, decent, affordable home, so his mother will have more financial stability.
Well, what is Shan doing now in the way of habitation?
She was living with some relatives. She was exiting some very difficult rental situations. Unfortunately, our families are low income. The average income for our families over the past 5 years has been $22,000. And if you try living on $22,000, renting and feeding and putting gas in the car and getting a winter coat for cold days like today for your kids, it's really challenging. So she was staying with some family.
How did it come about, Dominique Brandt of Habitat for Humanity, that non-churches came together? Someone had to propose this to these bodies of God's people. Was that you? How did they come together on this project?
Well, I will say that yes, I did propose it, but it was not my brainchild. The Faith House concept is a concept that Habitat has had in place for many years. We, as I said, started as a Christian organization. So our first natural partners are churches in our immediate community. And as you know, David, we live not only in the Bible Belt, but in the buckle of the Bible Belt. So it's been really neat to be able to work with many churches. The first church to step on board when we said we wanted to put together this faith house was Nathan's church.
And Nathan Malone is from Christ United Methodist. Nathan, tell us a little bit about your role there as the minister, who you are, where you are, and how your people responded to this concept.
Sure. I'm a relatively new pastor at Christ Church. Came there in July of last year and found a congregation that's very much mission and outreach oriented. I love to reach out in the community and do for others. And so they had had a group that I think once a month works for Habitat, volunteers at various locations, does different things at different locations, different houses. And so they were very much ready and on board when the proposal was made. Let's do a faith house. The other churches then began to come on board. In fact, I will list those. There's 4 Seventh-day Adventist churches from Stanford Gap, North River, Ooltewah, and Collegedale Community. There are 2 Episcopal churches, St. Paul's and St. Francis of Assisi, and then 2 United Methodist churches, Ooltewah and Christ United Methodist. To me, it's a great opportunity. We've got differences about even what day we worship on, differences of how we go about serving the Lord, and yet we are all about serving the needs of others. We believe that we've been blessed to be a blessing, that God has given us this mandate, if you will, this commandment to serve others. If we're going to be God's people, then we serve others. And so we're all about that. And Habitat's a great way ecumenically to come together and serve together as God's people.
Well, Nathan Malone, was it as simple as just writing a check from the tithe and gifts collection every Lord's Day, or was more given among your membership?
There is a financial commitment that the church makes. We have given significantly, and the other churches have as well, but we also, in a sense, come alongside the family who also works and works through helping to pay for their place. So it's not just giving, but coming alongside them in ministry.
So when you've shown up at the work site, have you seen Trey Melvin, the elder son of the mom moving in?
Yes, both of them are there. Certainly were there at the groundbreaking. It was just a great scene to see the many different churches, people of the different churches there, as well as the family there, and coming alongside on work days as well.
One of the things my listener is interested in hearing about Nathan Malone is the whole idea of a voluntary act versus a compulsory act. If this were a house funded by taxpayers, you would have perhaps a different ethic behind it, because those funds and that money would have been paid for by compulsion of people upstream or downstream who had to pay from their livelihoods to the tax collector to have that money made available. But in your situation, you don't have that. You have a voluntary gift of capital and time. How is that different? Does it really matter that this money for this house and this time was a gratuity? It was gracious and free. Does it really matter at all, Nathan Malone?
Well, certainly it matters, because again, we worship this God who came among us and said, if you're going to be part of my kingdom, you will be servants. That's a hallmark. That's a basic value. That's a basic understanding. Jesus said, even I came to serve, not to be served, but to serve. And so those who are part of the church, that's who we are.
And how do the great ones among you become the great ones?
It's to be the servants. That's what Jesus, at one point, his disciples were arguing about who will be the greatest among us. And he said, well, here's how you figure that out. The greatest will be the one who serves.
And among the enemies of the gospel, among the imperial establishment, you could say the great ones are always those who have that power and who lord it over you. And so there, the idea is that, well, we are great and powerful. We compel, we can order, we can ordain things to happen. We can ordain even good things to happen. But it's by power that we have arrogated and seized, perhaps over, with cunning, perhaps with coercion, and we're now on the top. And that kind of grace, I think the Lord is suspicious of, and he would rather that there be the voluntary kind that your members are giving.
Amen. I think I would get amens throughout the congregation for that kind of thing. Very much so.
So I just wanted to mention to you, David, that while Trey was out there for the groundbreaking, and we've got some great images of him kicking up some dirt, he's a little young to be on the construction site. So his
he wasn't there officially.
No, he wasn't. So his next opportunity to actually walk into the home will be tomorrow at the dedication at 6 p.m., which is open to anybody who would like to come and see, meet the family, see what a Habitat home looks like. It's simple, decent, affordable, no McMansions here, and meet many of the church members and many of the pastors that were part of this. One of the wonderful things about, for example, Pastor Malone and many of the other pastors of the churches that were involved is that they led by example. They did not just tell their congregations, go forth and build this home, but they actually showed up and picked up a hammer and a paintbrush. There is a theology behind this. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but our founder, Millard Fuller, back in the day, we started in 1976 in Americus, Georgia. Millard Fuller wrote a book called The Theology of the Hammer. And it was very much based on this book and this theology that the Faith House comes about. Because in that book, he talks about the fact that, as Pastor Nathan mentioned, we keep different Sabbaths. What the pastor wears when he's standing at the pulpit looks really different. We can disagree on baptism and on all kinds of different things, all kinds of different theological matters. But we can all agree that Christ came to save us, and he came and told us that we were required to care for the widows and the orphans and those less fortunate. And the theology of the hammer, picking up a hammer or a paintbrush, is the great unifier.
We're talking with Dominique Brandt from Habitat for Humanity. She is the development director. Now, that leads me to ask a question about the housing problem. We were hearing a lot about that at the city council meeting last night. And the issue before the council members was an ordinance for panhandling, that is to say, the activity of people mostly who don't have a fixed address, who don't have a house or don't have a home, who are begging for alms, they're begging for succor from people who are passing by on the sidewalk or maybe waiting at an intersection. So there's the panhandling ordinance story has a very large part of it, the housing shortage, the as I say, affordable, quote unquote, the affordable housing problem. What Dominique, would you say about that problem in your labors as a Christian organization and as a Christian? How can that issue of panhandling, the aggressive sort, be seen better by what you're doing here with this Faith House?
David, you're exactly correct. We do have a housing crisis situation. It's not a secret to us here in Chattanooga. It's a case around the country, but in our community, it's a very stark contrast. There have been many studies, including the articles that were published a couple of years ago about the poverty puzzle. We have a great divide. This is the tale of two cities. The haves have quite a bit, and the have-nots have not, quite truly. And that includes housing, which is the most stabilizing factor in a family, not only financially, but so the children are growing up in a community where they get to meet the neighbors, they know where they're going to school, they have the same place that they come home to, they have a room where they can feel comfortable and safe and warm and secure. So this is a really dire need. We call out to all of the community to come and be a part of this. There's many, many different ways. Picking up the hammer and the paintbrush is one simple way. We have many volunteers who volunteers with their checkbooks, excuse me. Not everybody can or wants to come out to a construction site, but everybody can write a check. And if it's $5, $5,000, $50,000, it makes a difference.
Well, I understand your answer, Dominique Brandt, and that is what I think my listener expects to hear about the housing work that Habitat for Humanity does. But Nathan Malone, the minister of Christ United Methodist Church, let me ask you about this proposal before the City Council, a 9-page bill, if you will, that attacks and criminalizes some kinds of begging, replicating a state law that makes aggressive panhandling, where the person touches you or blocks your movement or threatens you. These are forbidden in state law as crimes. That law is picked up and repeated in the ordinance proposal, and the objection has been almost exclusively from the left side of the Christian church, and on the grounds that it is unchristian and ungodly to have a rule like this. What do you make of your reading of this proposal, Nathan Malone?
Well, I can't say that I have read that proposal, and I don't want to get into the necessarily the specifics of that. I would simply say that I believe we are all judged. Society is judged by how we treat the most vulnerable among us. So, what do we give? How do we empower? How do we lift up those most vulnerable among us is always a challenge.
Well, that's not the issue here. The issue here is, should there be coercive power, the power of the police, to criminalize panhandling more generally, more broadly in Chattanooga? That's the objections all are making that point, alleging that is the case. The defenders are saying, as some said last night before the City Council, that we don't want our customers terrified and threatened by beggars, and we're losing business, and we rely on our customers to come back. They won't come back if they're fearful of being encountered after they pay their tip and leave their plates on the table and walk out. A man assailing them for $5. So that's the issue.
Mm.
What do you say, Dominique? Well, not your issue, but you live in Chattanooga.
I do.
This touches the housing question.
It absolutely touches all of us. And again, I would just echo the words of Pastor Nathan. We all have a responsibility as citizens in Chattanooga, as citizens of the world, as believers, if we're believers, as people of faith, whatever faith we embrace, as people of caring. And I think everybody wants to think of themselves as a caring person, to be looking out for those less fortunate.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with Dominique Brandt and Reverend Nathan Malone of Christ United Methodist Church. And caller, you're on the air. What's on your mind? This is David Tulis. We are arguing for local economy and the free market, and we are discussing the Habitat for Humanity House. And if you're just joining us, we're talking with Dominique Brandt. What is happening tomorrow at the Faith House, built by volunteers with the support of cash and help from 9 area churches?
Yeah, so tomorrow gets to be a huge celebration. We celebrated at the groundbreaking of this house a few months ago, and we're looking forward to this day. And so now this is a completion of the work of dozens of volunteers, 9 churches, and everybody gets to come together and pray over the house, bless the house, see the homeowner and her children come into this finished home for the first time. And we all get to dedicate this house to the Lord and celebrate his good works that he prepared for us. We're just the instrument. This is really God's work.
Will the title of this house be transferred to Shan Melvin? Is that what happens?
Absolutely. Our homeowners own their homes almost like everybody else. And the reason I say almost is because their mortgage is different from anybody else's mortgage. It carries no interest. That's correct. 0 interest on that mortgage. And so everything else about owning their home is exactly the same, except they pay no interest.
And to have a 0 interest mortgage is effectively a loss for the lender, because we have as much as 2% inflation in the retail sector. So you're losing the lender is losing 2% in buying power per year and extending a loan without an interest payment being made.
The lender, in this case, Habitat for Humanity, is investing that in the family versus losing that. And this is why it becomes so important. We sometimes get asked the questions, well, if the homeowners are purchasing their homes, why do you need donations? Well, they're purchasing the bricks and sticks cost of the home, not all of the staff labor and everything that goes into it. And as you said, we do invest in that. Our homeowners also have a forgivable $10,000 off that top of that mortgage that sort of sits there until it's the house is almost paid off at 20 years. And so that protects them from predatory lending. There's a lot of different things that we do in there to help our homeowners, but these are investments that we make in them. We do not consider them a loss.
What's the next? Well, it is a loss because you're the buying power of the dollar. That's not your fault. And everyone who uses dollars is losing at least 2% per year and more if the money is in the financial sector. But let me ask you, Dominique Brandt, right quickly, what is next for Habitat for Humanity? What's 5 years down the road? How many houses are in view to be built, these charitable houses, in, let's say, 5 years? How many do you do per year?
We're doing approximately 10 new home constructions per year, and this is one of 6 that we will finish by the end of our fiscal year, which is June 30th. So we've got 5 more under construction in different parts of town. We also do home repair work in the glass farm areas, and we do about 16 of those projects a year.
Well, we have with us also Nathan Malone of Christ United Methodist Church. What are your service times, Pastor Malone, and where is your church?
Church is at East Brainerd Road, at the corner of East Brainerd Road and Morris Hills Boulevard. And services are at 9:30 and 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, 4 different services.
We do thank you for joining us, Pastor Malone.
Certainly.
And also Dominique Brandt of Habitat for Humanity, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, David.
This is David Tulis. We argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. It is a very weak and mild argument, lococentrism and Nooga-centrism. I'd like to think that all of you out there, especially you, my listener right now, are becoming more Nooga-centric by tuning into our show, The David Tulis Show, here at 92.7 and 95.3 FM HD4. Near is better than far, small than big, and simple than complex. And down in the footnotes, in Helvetica type, the neutral type without serifs, that is to say, without the little knives that government words have when they appear in type, we say personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. Brought to you by yournews.com, David Tulis, the editor of Nooganomics.com. Go there and see what I had to say last night in 4 minutes about the abuse of the transportation law against whom? Against the same folks cared for by Habitat for Humanity. That would be the poor, and also the immigrants, the ignorant, and the minority. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. 3, 2, 1. Chattanooga.